Our latest session wasn't very long, so this will end up being a shorter recap. Where did we leave off? Up right, in the dungeon. My brother couldn't make it to this session, so we asked him what he wanted Snood to do while he was gone. We ended up having Snood go out to guard the entrance and keep an eye on their camp, while the rest of the group would continue to explore more rooms with crystals in them, delving deeper into troglodyte territory. Since Waffle has dark vision, they were scouting ahead and found some rotting, stinking troglodyte corpse. Well, one to be specific, and it was kind of just out in the open. Perhaps some signs of a struggle, but no obvious offender around, so they kept on going. In the next cavern, they spotted 3 troglodytes sitting around a stone slab and eating something. They cautiously approached while Guam and Juniper were standing by in a flanking positions, bows ready, and called out in Woldish. And to their surprise, the troglodytes knew some Woldish and responded without immediately attacking. So that was a relief. The troglodytes seemed annoyed and confused at someone else in their cave, but didn't explicitly tell Waffle to leave. Waffle asked if the troglodytes have seen any witches around recently, or if they knew how to get down to the lower levels of the caverns. Troglodytes haven't seen any witches or mages recently, but they do know how to go downstairs, but they won't share that information unless Waffle can bring them some food. Waffle, knowing the group is running low on rations, say they don't have any food to spare, and the troglodytes tell them to just go and catch some monkeys and bring them back. As much as Waffle doesn't want to kill some innocent monkeys just hanging out, they do want to catch the switch. So they regroup with Guam and Juniper, catch them up, and make their way back to the cave entrance to slaughter some monkeys. It's a bit of a mess. The monkeys don't really have that high of an AC, but the party is rolling really poorly. I ended up giving them 3 rounds of combat before all the monkeys managed to escape, and luckily in that amount of time, the 3 of them managed to kill 6 monkeys before the last of them slip away. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the party rolls a random encounter in 2d4, the max roll, so 8, giant centipedes come calling into the cavern and starts attacking the party. Now, I will admit that I made a pretty decently big mistake here. Since this adventure was originally written for Old School Essentials, the system Dolmenwood is based off of, I used that system version of giant centipedes instead of the Dolmenwood one. I couldn't find them just in the heat of the moment, so I assumed they wouldn't be that different, and close enough in strength that it really wouldn't matter. Unfortunately, I was incorrect. The giant centipedes in OSC are much deadlier than they are in Dolmenwood, not necessarily as far as damage goes. They're pretty close in that regard, but mainly in the effects of their poison. In OSC, getting poisoned by centipedes make it so you can't perform any attacks for 10 days, just straight up can't attack. While in Dolmenwood, it gives them a penalty. It's like -2 or something like that for 1d10 days. Which unfortunately, again, both Waffle and Guam get poisoned. So if it weren't for their quick positioning at the beginning of this encounter, this could have easily been a TPK, to be honest. I plan to do a little bit of rectifying to reduce the effect, the length of the poison effects for our next session, but whatever. Luckily, their backs were pinned up against the staircase out of the dungeon instead of up against the wall. So the group got pretty lucky in that regard and manages to retreat. I ruled that the centipedes don't like the sunlight too much, so they don't pursue the party outside. Snood and Juniper helped the poison members of our party retreat back to the refuge where they stood the night, and then return back to Castle Brackenwold the next day to recover in a little more comfort. Snood remained with the sick members of our party, while Juniper made an effort to try and sell the cultist robes that they had found earlier in the dungeon. Since the robes didn't have any specifically mentioned value in the dungeon guide, I ended up referring to these as clothes extravagant from Dolmenwood, which means they are valued at about 100 gold each. She starts by bringing the robes to a local jeweler who offers 80 gold each, but Juniper feels like she can do better. When she mentioned that these robes belong to a cult, the shopkeeper recommended bringing these robes to the Shadow House with no additional marks or detail. Juniper shrugs and, driven by wealth, heads over to the Shadow House. Strangely enough, she can't seem to find the entrance, but she does find a door knocker that seems capable of speech. After a short conversation, The door knocker redirects Juniper over to the Chateau, the upscale inn in the city, and to tell the host that she has a meeting with a Lady Periwinkle. Juniper follows instruction unquestionably and ends up in a private meeting room with a, well, this isn't Lady Periwinkle, but seems to be some sort of associate of hers. They have a brief conversation about the robes, an inspection by the magician. Through some clever words of Juniper, she ends up getting 115 gold for each robe. And I forget off the top of my head how many robes they ended up selling versus how many they have. But they end up with a really pretty penny for sure. After the exchange, Juniper had questioned this magician, who she now knows is named Martin, why they would be willing to pay top coin for these robes. Martin was willing to explain that these robes were crafted and primed in such a way that would allow for a skilled magic user to bestow permanent enchantments on them. Not every piece of equipment is capable of holding permanent enchants, so finding some ready to go is a time and money saver. Juniper plans to see that her companions may be interested in enchantments in the future, and Martin happily offers her to return to the Shadow House for all their magical needs. And that's more or less where we ended. Like I said, this wasn't the longest session in the world. It was only like 2.5 hours in person. But since Snood wasn't there, we didn't want to progress too far since his character was, still pretty directly involved. Hopefully we can get our games running again consistently soon. We've had some real life distractions as of late, but those are mostly resolved and settled down. So hopefully we should be ready to go. And that's all for now. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.